Aloha! You are listening to Inside the Desert Oasis Room, episode number 171. This episode is brought to you by Tandawai Rum. During this unique and challenging time, Tandawai stands in unity with our partners, customers, and community, with strength and resilience to get through this pandemic, and serving our community by acting responsibly through quarantine and social distancing practices. To enjoy Tandawai rum and Tandawai cocktails from the comfort of your own home, visit our social media pages on Facebook or Instagram at Tandawai Rum. We will get through this together. On this installment of the Covid Chronicles, we chat with Randy Wong. Randy is the co-founder, band leader, and music director of the modern Exotica band, Waitiki. On this episode, we briefly touch on the current state of affairs on the Hawaiian Islands regarding the COVID pandemic. However, for the bulk of our chat, we talk about his and his band members' roots in Exotica music. Learn about Waitiki's newest projects and find out how they, as professional musicians, have been persevering artistically through this pandemic. As always, I hope you enjoy this episode as much as we did bringing it to you. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider helping us with your support during this challenging time. Stop by desertoasisroom.com to check out our merch or leave us a tip. We've got tiki mugs, t-shirts, and pendants available right now. Any purchase or donation, no matter the size, is totally appreciated and helps keep this podcast coming to you every week. Alrighty, grab a cocktail and join us inside the Desert Oasis Room as we hop over to the islands of Hawaii and give it up for our friend Randy Wong. Aloha.
Aloha. Hey, Adrian. Nice to talk to you.
Hey, cheers. How you doing, Randy?
Good, man. It's great to hear your voice and, everything together in Tiki,
Thank you. It's great to hear you, too. How is stuff going for you guys over there out in the islands right now? Are people still traveling to the islands?
Yeah, I think people are still traveling to the islands. There's definitely some quarantine procedures that are happening. You got to do like a 14-day quarantine, and the authorities kind of put you through the ringer, some interview questions, and make sure that you check in, every so often.
Wow.
Make sure that you're not going out. I think it's pretty rigorous from what I've heard from people who have been coming in, but the rigor is for safety, so that we can all
get it.
Help to flatten the curve, so to speak.
I have a buddy who. He's here in LA. Well, he was here in LA. He's back in Oahu now. That's where he was born and raised. But he had to decide when he was going to fly out there, or if he was going to fly out there, because if he left after a certain date, he would have to fall into that 14-day quarantine requirement. Mm-hmm. And he made it out there just in time. He landed something at like 11:30 something at night, and at midnight was when they were enforcing that new quarantine requirement of 14 days.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think I
just mentioned
that on that other podcast, the Skull and Crown.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, where are they making people quarantine when they do that?
Well, I think you self-quarantine in wherever, like your hotel or your home or wherever you're staying.
Okay. Wow, interesting. How's the tourism looking like right now? Is it totally dead, or are there still people? Like, I saw a picture on Reddit or something of people getting ticketed for laying on the beach.
Yeah,
I'm assuming those are tourists.
Right. I think there is some of that. To be quite honest, I haven't left the house recently.
Okay.
So I don't know really what's going on out beyond like my immediate neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah. So if the quarantine were lifted at the end of this month, do you think everything would just go back to normal? Do you think that there'd be a recovery period?
I think there's got to be a recovery period of some sort. I mean, I'm not an expert in this field at all.
Yeah, I'm just getting your opinion.
First time that we're all experiencing it, right? But
my thought is like, there's going to be new regulations, right, with social distancing on the planes, which will reduce visitors, social distancing in restaurants, social distancing on tours, all that kind of stuff, hotels maybe, because you'll have very large public areas at the hotels where they're going to start separating people. If there's a restriction there, I'm sure it's going to be different everywhere, but in the beginning, I'm sure also that there's going to be something that's going to slow us back into normalcy. We're not just going to jump right back into where we were, That's my guess.
Yeah, definitely could be.
So I'm glad that you joined me. I appreciate you taking time to join the podcast.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, I mean, I love your show, and of course, I love checking out the Desert Oasis room, at least through pictures. And I think right now we all need to escape, right? I know, right? So here's the thing, all these years that I've known you, how long do we go back, dude? A long time. Yeah, probably about like at least a dozen years.
At least a dozen. Yeah. And I think it's even longer than that. And all this time, I've never actually got to talk to you about your music. So I want to ask you a bunch of questions. So if you don't mind me like kind of doing a deep dive on your background, let's start with that. Let's tell our listeners that aren't familiar with your musical background a little bit more about that.
Sure. Okay. So I'm the bassist and the band leader for Waitiki, an Exotica band that was started in Boston. We started in 2003. Prior to Boston, I'm born and raised in Hawaii, on the island of Oahu, and I grew up playing music, starting pretty young, age 4. I started with the piano and singing solfege, which is like this French pedagogy of learning to read music. And then I started playing the upright bass in 3rd grade in my elementary school. We were all required to learn to play an instrument.
Right.
And so my parents are both amateur musicians. My mom plays a little bit of piano and harp, and my father is a Hawaiian slack key guitarist.
Okay.
And so I was always around him and like all my Calabash uncles. He was one of the last students of Auntie Alice Namakelua, who was a very famous slack key guitarist and pedagogue, kind of like the Bach of slack key guitar.
Nice.
And so I grew up playing, learning a lot of Hawaiian music through him and through his friends. And I got to sit in with Puamana as a child. And I played with Keoki Van Bleinberg, who was he won the Hawaiian falsetto contest in the 90s. And then I played with another group called Waipuna. And I was just always around Hawaiian music. At the same time, I was playing an orchestra in an organization called the Hawaii Youth Symphony, which actually now I'm the president of. And my high school had things that high school has. They have a marching band, a jazz band,
right,
concert band, all that kind of stuff. So I played in all of those groups, and then I ended up going away to college for music. I studied classical bass performance at New England Conservatory, which is a really renowned music school in Boston. I ended up playing in a number of professional orchestras, all in the New England area. I ended up doing a lot of jazz studies. Also in Boston, there's a lot of great players that go to a Berklee College of Music.
Right.
And so, played a lot of music that way. For students from Hawaii, there aren't that many students from Hawaii that go into music as a career professionally, especially in classical and jazz. And at the time, my buddy Abe Lagrimas Jr., who he's a drummer, a jazz drummer, and a vibraphone player, and now he plays ukulele. Both of us were in Boston at the time, He was at Berkeley. I was at New England Conservatory, and we were trying to connect with other Hawaii students. So we go to like Hawaii clubs that were Hawaii culture clubs.
Sure.
That were organized. Like Boston University had one, Harvard had one, Boston College, and a lot of times those clubs when they throw their luau's, a couple of students get together and they perform some Hawaiian music, or maybe they have the budget to hire a group from Hawaii. And so we're just thinking, well, if we started to play Hawaiian music and do it in a way that's different from, the usual ukulele guitar kind of stuff, then we could really have something special to share with these Hawaii clubs. And that was kind of the basis for Waitiki.
Dude, I have so many questions now that you've given me all this information. So I want to start from when you were younger. You started playing upright bass in 3rd grade. Yep,
9 years old. Yeah, it was, and also Arthur Lyman was a family friend.
Okay.
So back then, I'll send you a picture. You can maybe put it up on the podcast page or something. There's a picture of me and Mr. Lyman. He was playing vibraphone, and I was just kind of like looking over the bars.
Oh, how cool is that?
And so the sound was in my ear from early on, but I didn't know what Exotica was, until much later.
So in Hawaii, everybody learns how to play instruments at a very young age, and every year you're required to play an instrument. And obviously, like, people are choosing ukulele. I mean, I know that it's very much part of the local culture. It's very musical. But I guess that also comes from what kind of school you're going to, right?
I think the culture is pretty musical, but unfortunately, there aren't a lot of music education programs in Hawaii. In fact, like in the DOE, in the public schools, there isn't a requirement that the schools have a music program, for example. Right. So many schools, especially elementary and middle schools, do not have music programs of any kind.
Okay.
They don't even have general music.
Okay. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
So, do you play piano too?
No, not really.
Oh, really? And your mom plays piano?
I don't play any piano.
So your mom never taught you that?
She signed me up for piano lessons for a few years. I wasn't very good at it.
Oh, okay.
And I think she really wanted me to continue, but I ended up switching over to the bass.
Yeah, because as a piano player, she can play the harp, right? It's strung the same way that a piano is keyed. Is that correct?
Similar, yeah.
Yeah, from what I understand.
I mean, there are a lot of different types of harps, so it kind of depends, like if you're on a lever harp or a pedal harp. The exact specifics, but she didn't get into playing the harp until I think after I was already out of high school.
Okay, and vibes too? Are vibes also kind of keyed the same way that a piano is keyed?
Yeah, vibes are chromatic, like a chromatic keyboard instrument.
Right. So when I was a kid, I learned to play piano under the forceful hand of my mother. And I hated it. Every day I had to do practice, and it just kept me away from being with my friends. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until later in life that I thought, wow, I wish I had retained more of that. I retained a lot of it, and I was able to apply it to when I was learning how to play ukulele because of the scales. So, when I actually compared the two, and I thought, oh, okay, so this is where all my flats and sharps and how my scales work, right? It really made things clearer for me and made it really a lot easier to learn the ukulele. So I was just curious, how much of that rubbed off on you at home. I think the bass it probably uses the same kind of scale technique, right, as any other stringed instrument. So, but what I'm curious about is what made you choose upright bass and in 3rd grade?
That is the only question you'll ask that I don't have an answer to. I have no idea. All I know is that for some reason, I remember on the day that we were going to have class, I was like, I really want to play the saxophone. And I don't remember being asked what I wanted to play. I think they just said, like, you should play the bass. And and that's what I ended up with. And before I knew it, my parents were, getting a hatchback.
Yeah.
Haul the thing around.
That's funny. So
Yeah.
let's talk about your time in Boston. So number one, you must have been a fish out of water coming from the islands, and then all of a sudden you're in the coldest part of the country.
Yeah, it's something that I look forward to, and I spent a little bit of time in the summer on the East Coast. I went to this music program out at Tanglewood, which is the summer home of the Boston Symphony.
Okay.
So I got to know a little bit about the New Englander culture a bit, but I hadn't experienced the Boston winter until you're right, until I moved there, and so that was definitely pretty different.
Yeah, I don't know if I could survive that, to be quite honest with you.
It makes the cold makes us better people.
That's a good answer. That's a good
get
answer.
Some grit,
Oh yeah. So when you were over there in Boston and your friend Abe was over there, was that planned, or was that kind of just a coincidence you were there at the same time?
Well, he's 2 years younger than me, so I was there before him. But his older brother Eric was there a couple of years before me.
Okay.
And Eric went to Berkeley, and Eric was doing he was doing music business degree at Berkeley.
Okay.
And then I came up to Boston, and at the same time, Abe had already been going to Berkeley's 5-week summer program, and so we knew that he was going to come to Boston eventually.
Okay.
And so it just worked out that the three of us were all there pretty much at the same time. And they were my partners in getting Waitiki started. We also started a record label called Pass Out Records, which still exists to this day. And that was started as one of our kind of, buddy projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you were there in Boston, you studied what style of music? Was it more classical and jazz?
Yeah, it was classical. I majored in classical bass performance. My goal was to become an orchestral bass player. But I had been playing some jazz in Hawaii. Abe and I started a jazz trio together when I was in 10th grade and he was in 8th grade. So I played some jazz before that, and when I went to NEC, I continued to play jazz. I studied with a great jazz bass player, Cecil McBee, and pianist Michael Caine, who Michael Caine played with Jack DeJohnette, who's like a really famous jazz drummer. And he also was working with Michelle Indigo cello at the time. And so I had a lot of classical and jazz influences at the same time.
Yeah. And it's so different from Hawaiian music.
Yeah, really different in a lot of ways from Hawaiian music, but not. Music is a language. Everyone says, "Oh, it's a universal language," and not everybody, knows exactly what that means. But I think in this case, there are a lot of things that translate from just general concepts that translate from one thing to the next.
Yeah, I want to talk about Waitiki 7.
Yeah,
when you started there in Boston, was there 7 of you, or was it just you and Abe?
So the Abe and I started. The first thing what I did before Abe got there was I started a contemporary Hawaiian band that was modeled a little bit after like Kalapana and a little bit after like some of the Pure Heart and kind of like John Cruz stuff.
Oh yeah,
and I assembled it with musicians that were my, I was going to school with at NEC, at New England Conservatory. So that was a little bit of an experiment. And then when Abe came up, we experimented with some ukulele. He started playing the uke, and we had a band called the Mongooses, which is kind of like the direct predecessor to Waitiki.
Okay.
And then when we decided that we wanted to have an Exotica band, partially because he was playing with Don Tiki at the time, and he really dug the music.
Okay.
He was introduced to Exotica through Don Tiki, and he was already playing because Don Tiki was playing with Martin Denny, so Abe was playing with Martin Denny, and he was also playing with Lopaka.
Oh, okay.
And then we were like, well, there's a lot of jazz musicians in Boston that we thought we could musically direct them and introduce them to Exotica. So we could form a band that was inspired, it was largely inspired by Don Tiki.
Okay, because I was curious where the Exotica angle came from too, because, Exotica is not exactly something that people know about even today. I mean, today people are learning a little bit more about it, but back then it was really unorthodox, and to follow that path, especially in modern day, right?
Right. So I had a class in college. It was a career skills class, and we had to come up with like a press kit. The assignment was to find a group, a historical group that you thought had a great story, and you had to come up with a press kit and like imagine what the pitch was to make this group come to life. And I was like, I wanted to do something different, and I had like my CD collection with me, and I had some Arthur Lyman CDs, and I was like, I hadn't really dug into the music at that point, but I was just kind of looking at the CD cover, and I was like, man, what was the story behind the CD cover, and like what is this music, So put on the record, the CD, and there's all these monkey sounds and bird calls. I think the first track I listened to was Coronation or Taboo or something, and I was just like, whoa, this is wild. And so we started to kind of flesh it out, and then at the same time we were thinking about starting our own group, and so Exotica just seemed like the right fit. It's jazzy. The music hadn't really been played before. I mean, we certainly hadn't ever heard it performed live. Abe was playing both vibes and drums, and so we were like, yeah, let's just put it together. So we made a demo of just the two of us, and we shopped the press kit that I made for class. We shopped it around to like all these Chinese restaurants in Boston, and it just so happened that there was a tiki bar that was opening by Fenway Park, by the baseball park, right at that same time. It was called the Tiki Room, and it was like a corporate place, but it was a tiki. It was actually a tiki place, and it wasn't really set up for live music. So we never. I think we only played there once, but we did talk them into having Exotica as the soundtrack to the restaurant. And to this day, I still consider that a major win, because that was back in 2003.
Right. How did they respond to that when you were trying to push Exotica? Did they even know what that was?
No, they had no idea. They were planning to play Top 40, which is actually not uncommon even nowadays, right? I mean, you still have all these corporate places that do that, but it taught us a lot about trying to sell the music and explain to people what it is.
Right. So you leave Boston, you finish all your stuff there, and then you go back home. And what happens to the band after you go back home? Okay,
so I was in Boston for like 12 years.
Oh, you were there that long? I didn't know you were there that long.
Flourished through that time.
Okay.
Yeah, and so like we put out a bunch of like Waitiki quartet recordings starting in 2005, I guess.
Okay.
The first one was Charred Mammal Flesh, which was like partially Martin Denny influence, and then the other part was like it was very like Zappa-esque, I guess.
Okay.
And then we did another recording, Rendezvous no Konkaluku. That was our first experiment with putting something out on vinyl. And then we had a project with we're really into the music of Juan Garcia Esquivel. So we had this thing called the Orchestratica, which was great. It took us to Mexico with a big band, and eventually we kind of shipped that project off. Brian O'Neill, Mr. Ho, ended up taking it on, and now he calls it I think it's Mr. Ho's Orchestratica, but its roots were in Waitiki.
Okay.
And then eventually we got a call from the German government, and they're doing this festival called Festival of Water Music, and they said, we're going to bring Don Tiki from Hawaii. We'd love to have Waitiki. Would you do something special for us? What would you do? And so we're like, well, let's put together an all-star septet. And so that was the Waitiki 7. So that was in 2008, I think.
Wow.
And that's when the septet started.
Dude, I'm learning so much. I didn't know that Mr. Hose was an offshoot.
Yeah, Mr. Ho was actually so things about Mr. Ho. He was our original vibes player.
Okay.
He started with us in 2004. Ho is actually an acronym.
Oh, it is.
It came from a nickname that Abe and I had for him.
Okay.
We used to call him Howley O'Neill because he was the whitest guy we knew. and then we shortened it to Mr. Ho.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he was with us until 2006 or 2007 or something.
Okay. So now my question, instead of you coming home, is why did you come home? You were there for 12 years.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing I wanted to come home. I'd been away from Hawaii for a while. 2009, 2010, I made like 12 or 13 trips back to Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
So I just started thinking, like, could I shift my home base to Hawaii and then go back to Boston as needed?
Yeah.
And so I did. And
from Hawaii, Boston is the other side of the world. It's so far away.
Yeah, it was before Hawaiian had that direct flight. So
I didn't even know they had a direct flight.
Really felt far away.
Wow. So then let's go back to my original question. When you get to Hawaii, how does the band change there?
Yeah, since in Hawaii, we've been on a little bit of a hiatus, self-induced hiatus, mainly because of me. My day job is I'm the president and executive director for the Hawaii Youth Symphony, and so through Hawaii Youth Symphony, we serve kids on all islands. We have like 700 students and 7 orchestras and 2 jazz bands and all this other stuff. And so I'm just really busy with that. And Helen, who's in the Waitiki 7, she's our violinist, and me, we both play professionally in the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra.
Okay. So
it's been really busy. But since then, we've been putting together a couple of different projects. We did a Waitiki 7+7 project, which is the Waitiki 7, so that with the addition of a string quartet and a jazz horn trio.
That sounds awesome.
So that was it was awesome. We decided to do a bunch of the I don't know, are you familiar with Buddy Collette's album Polynesia?
Yes. Yeah.
So we did a bunch of we transcribed that record.
Very
Tim
nice.
Mayer did the transcriptions and the arrangements. So we did a bunch of things off of that record, and then we've been kind of toying with different ways to expand the instrumentation of Waitiki. We've played with Pop's orchestra. So we played with both the Youth Symphony and then with the Idaho State Symphony.
Okay.
We've been just trying out different ways to have Waitiki kind of expand beyond either the quartet or the septet.
Yeah, that's pretty
format.
Cool. Yeah, I noticed though. I mean, you loaded some stuff recently on Facebook, which is what prompted me to call you. It was Waitiki quartet performances on Hawaii Public Radio, and it made me wonder. Is it still a septet, or is it just down to a quartet at this point? But I think you're answering my question. Maybe sometimes you just get the 4 of you, right? And maybe sometimes you get the whole band together.
Exactly. Yeah, it's flexible. I mean, we're musicians, right? So
sure.
We look for projects and we just look for ways to keep it fresh.
Yeah.
There was a time where we, every gig that we took for like about a 5-year period was a septet gig.
Right.
And that's great, but it's, there's a lot of overhead and there's a lot of just moving people, 7 people all living in different parts of the world. It's hard to get together,
Oh, yeah.
But there's something that I love. What I love about the quartet stuff that we just released, the videos, is that I think it brings us really close to what the original Martin Denny feeling might have been. Oh, my God.
I love it, man. It's so good. It's so good. Like you posted, I shared the Adventures in Paradise video. And then I said, I want more. And then you sent me a link with 4 more. Yeah. And I thought, okay, can I still say that I want more?
Yes, you can. I mean, I want more. I love it.
You should take those 4 plus the Adventures in Paradise, which I think was all part of the same session, right?
Yeah, we knocked it out. We did that. Initially, we planned to just release like a concert stream. And so we recorded it. We just recorded it all like back to back. One take.
Gotcha. I was gonna say you should
about 30 minutes of music, and then I realized like I can't put a 30-minute video on YouTube. Like,
Oh yeah. Well,
so
people will watch it.
I broke it up into pieces.
I would watch it, and I know a lot of my listeners would watch it. But what I was going to say is you should maybe release that as an EP or something.
Yeah, we're planning to. It's actually, this year is the 15th anniversary since our first release of the Waitiki Quartet's Charred Mammal Flesh.
Oh, very nice.
And
congratulations.
Man, so 15 years of Waitiki recordings. We're planning to get it out. It's imminent. I'll just say it that way.
Yeah. So I have a couple questions more about the music. So number one, I'm curious how Exotica fits on the islands today, because today there is so much popular. I mean, I love Hawaiian music. I know a lot of Tiki people don't like it, but it reminds me of the islands, and of course traditional Hawaiian music, and then slide key guitar and that kind of stuff, right? How does Exotica fit in with all of that in Hawaii? Is there a bigger listening audience now for Exotica music?
I think there's continually more people who are hip or are ready to become hip to Exotica. Mm-hmm. What's really interesting is, there are a lot of artists who are familiar with the music and they reference it in their own ways. Raiatea, amazing musician, beautiful singer. I had the opportunity to work with her through the Hawaii Youth Symphony last year. And we did a show that was inspired by her album, Sea of Love.
Okay.
And the Sea of Love album is very much Exotica.
Oh.
It has an Exotica sound.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, man. It's got a mid-century sound. She's got this unbelievable golden voice, and we have we commissioned some arrangements from this incredible composer. His name's Michael Thomas Foumai, Foumai. He was a violinist who went through the Youth Symphony program and then became a world famous classical composer. And so he wrote these arrangements that are very much Exotica inspired, and it just has that lush tropical mid-century sound.
Right.
We worked with Jimmy Borges, who your listeners are probably familiar with. He was one of the disciples of Frank Sinatra.
Okay.
And
wow.
Before Jimmy passed, Waitiki did a show with him and the Youth Symphony, and we also got some orchestrations that are just right in line with that kind of that Nelson Riddle sound.
Yeah. Very nice.
There are a lot of slide key guitarists who are experimenting with different types of tunings and different sounds and bringing in influences from all around the world. Makana is one that comes to mind. Keola Beamer, of course. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of folks out there who, because Hawaii, I think, inspires just like, these exotic ideas.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's so natural for that music to enter into other artists' work.
Yeah. This all leads me into my next question about your music, which is your process. So take me through your process, because it's sounding like that there's so much influence with the styles of Exotica that you are exploring and that you guys are recording. Who's writing the music, and where are these concepts coming from? And also, what do you think is different about the Exotica today than the Exotica from the generation before us?
I like that last question. I get to, okay, so the influences, I was checking out the interview that you did with Ixta Huele with Matthias and them. First of all, I have so much respect for Matthias and that group.
So do I.
And I agree with with their thinking, as to Stravinsky and Rite of Spring and so forth. But I think it goes. There are other influences as well. Classical music from Maurice Ravel.
Okay.
If you check out like his Daphnis and Chloe Suite or his string quartet. Fritz Kreisler, who was a famous violinist, and he would compose violin showpieces. His Tambourine Chinoise. Arnold Bax. There are a lot of classical composers that that definitely influenced Exotica. And for me, as a musician, as a classical musician, that has it plays a large part. When Waitiki started, we consisted of basically two things: covers of Martin Denny and Arthur Lyman that Abe and I would transcribe off the records.
Wow!
And then originals that I would write. And so, in terms of transcribing stuff off the records, I mean, it was what records we had access to.
Yeah. And
then finding ones that we thought would work well in our limited kind of quartet setting. So something like jungle drums would have been really difficult for us to do because Martin Denny's jungle drums has choir, or to do like Tahitian Sunset would have been really difficult because none of us, really whistle that well, and we didn't have boob amps.
Mm-hmm.
But we did go for like When First I Love or Manila. Or themes from Adventures in Paradise because they're easy to adapt to a small quartet. Sure. And then in terms of like writing tunes, I think every composer takes a different perspective. For me, I'm really, I really think about something like it's almost like an exercise. It's like something that I want to build. Maybe right. It's like a cool bass line that I found and I want to like build a song around it. That was basically the case of China Fan. Or maybe there's I want to create like a showpiece. Like we created a Louis Chinois, which means the Chinese bear, and it's essentially a violin concerto for Helen, and it's it's kind of keyed, or not keyed, but it's themed after Tambourine Chinoise by Fritz Kreisler.
Mm-hmm.
To come up with something that can fill a certain need in the band.
Right.
Other times there's, opportunities for humor or puns in the music. Going back to like our first release, Charred Mammal Flesh, we used to go clubbing a lot. So like Cave of Uldo, was started off as a quote and a pun to Usher and Lil Jon's Yeah.
Really?
Kind of have a hip hop groove. And then, we were like, oh, it's hip hop. So we could also have like a pun like hip hop, aloha, like Exotica hip hop. What would that be like? And then we were like, well, what do we do in the middle of the song? Well, what's the biggest U-turn we could take? And so we added 4 bars of Rebel String Quartet.
Oh, interesting.
Or like Sumotori Sumo Pop, which comes off of the Rendezvous album. We wrote as a character piece for this imaginary, sumo wrestler that Tim would wear like the sumo suit in concert. But it's also based off of a Thelonious Monk tune called "Well You Needn't."
Oh,
or like I was trying to learn I was in a jazz ensemble in NEC, and we were playing all of our standards in odd meters. So like Summertime, we were playing it in 5 as a merengue. So took that, wrote a new melody. That's Flamingo Merengue.
Mm-hmm. Except
the last bar is in 6 because why not? So it's just kind of a combination of things. I think when other composers are different. I know Tim is very influenced by just kind of like the idea, the experience, the atmospheric experience. So he wrote a tune called Cave of the Tarpon, which is about an underwater cave where tarpon, like these giant fish, live.
Right.
And so he wrote a whole song that, all about that.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. I think the thing that's in common between us and groups of the past is that nothing is on autopilot.
Sure.
There's a conscientious decision about the arrangement, about the instrumentation, who's playing what in the melody or the harmony, or what instruments we're using, which bird calls are where and when. There's a performance practice.
Right.
What's being done.
So when you guys are writing a song and you're performing it for the first time, each person is contributing to that based on what they are bringing to the piece.
Yeah. I mean, everyone in the group is a professional musician.
Yeah.
So they each have their own perspective and their own skills that they bring, to the piece. Usually, I mean, because we have so limited rehearsal time, what we do is we send out the charts well in advance. Everyone practices at home.
Yeah.
And then when we come together, it's like you have one shot to play the piece through before we're going on stage.
Wow, that's crazy.
And so the level that the musicians are at is that when they're on stage, it's basically they have the chart in front of them so that they know the title of the tune, and compared to like what the song is, but they're not reading music. They're not sight reading.
Okay.
They've already got it internalized. It's already a part of them.
Yeah. Wow. Are you guys performing right now? Or, is everything kind of put on hold over there?
Yeah, we're not performing right now. The most recent thing we really did was that quartet thing at Hawaii Public Radio. Yeah. But even that one, we rolled in. We didn't rehearse.
Okay, wow.
Maybe you could tell. I don't know.
No, I can't tell.
Didn't rehearse.
It was great.
We just went in. We played those 5 songs down, and we left.
Very nice. Yeah, that was going to be a question too, because with everybody kind of told to social distance and quarantine and self-isolate and all that, I wondered how challenging that would be for musical acts to keep their skills up. But I think everything's just on hold. So
yeah. I think it's different because it may be different for us because we're musicians by trade. We have to play.
Yeah.
And in fact, like with Hawaii Symphony or other groups other employers, they're telling us put out music while you're on hiatus, so that they have content for their stuff. So we're all actively playing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So that last question that I had was, what do you think is different about Exotica music today than in previous generations?
I think one thing that we have the benefit of is access to recordings.
Oh yeah.
It's great that there's this history. Now we're looking at 50, 60 years on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for musicians like us, we want to dig into the past repertoire. It's all there. Ethel Azama, Buddy Collette, the entire discographies of Martin Denny, Arthur Lyman, Gene Rains, it's all there.
Right.
So there's so much that we can learn from what they've already done.
Do you think that, so here's kind of my thought about it.
Yeah.
What I think is different today is that it seems that Exotica music today is written more for the forefront instead of the background. Because a lot of times when I hear Exotica music from the past, and Martin Denny wasn't like this, and Arthur Lyman wasn't like this, and some of the greats weren't like this, but there was maybe a more obscure artist that had an Exotica album that really wrote it more as a background piece or a soundtrack to something, right? Where it was maybe as a soundtrack to a film or a soundtrack to an environment like a restaurant, and that was just really the intent of the music. But today, I don't think I can name an Exotica track that's been written or performed that hasn't been something that's meant to be played on stage in front of an audience. Well,
I don't know. I think it depends. I think that's a really astute insight. I think it depends, though. If you look at, there's some groups where, really only Martin Denny, Arthur Lyman, and Gene Rains and those guys were performing, were actively performing. Right?
Yeah.
If you look like Bob Drazin's music, he did it as a side project. It became popular among a niche crowd later on.
I didn't want to say his name, but I saw him play live at the Hukilau many, many years ago, and to be honest with you, it was hard for me to enjoy it the same way that I enjoy a Martin Denny album.
That's what I'm trying to say. It was written with a different construct. Now, I think when you saw him play, you probably saw Waitiki play because we were his band for 2 years at Hukilau.
Okay.
And then we also played with him at Oasis, and
I've seen you guys. Yeah. Now you know what, you're right.
And then we had that. We put together the Don the Beachcomber Music and Cocktail Festival.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he came up and he played a whole show with us.
Yeah. Yeah. His style of music was not the same to me. So, it wasn't as I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for. It seemed more that it was composed for as a soundtrack as opposed to a performance. I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, that's. I think we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all in the same realm. People use tiki music in different ways now, and us being in the tiki circuit, I think, is different because there wasn't a circuit of music necessarily in the same way.
I think it's a good answer.
Ago.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think it's a great answer. Yeah.
And they were creating music that was fresh and new, and in response to, I mean, in some ways, Exotica music was the first kind of like music of people of color, among a very not people of color audience. Along with jazz and Latin jazz, but Exotica, really brought things, really highlighted, all the great differences between the different cultures, of people of Hawaii, for example.
Right.
When Arthur Lyman would go on talk shows and talk about and play, he was making a statement about who he was as a Hawaiian musician and as a musician entering the world.
Right.
That it has a totally different social context than those of us that like we enjoy playing Exotica and we go and play at Tiki Oasis or Hukilau or wherever, but we're not making the same statement really that I think Arthur Lyman was in his music.
Sure. If I knew then what I know now, I would have went and watched him perform when he was still alive. And same with Martin Denny, because those guys were still performing it into their later years. And it's not something that I knew about at the time. Yeah, that's something that I wish I could go back and do. So yeah. What's the future of Waitiki?
We've been so lucky. We have some really dedicated fans going back, 15, 16, 17 years now. And so they've been clamoring for us to make a return. And just say that the Quartet Exotica stuff that we posted is just the very tip of the iceberg for that. We are planning to come back on the scene in an exciting way. We're in talks for a big show in 2021 that I can't tell you what it is yet, but I will say that it'll be somewhere where we haven't been in a very long time, and it's one of our favorite places.
Okay.
And
that's a nice tease.
And we're hoping to pilot. We've been piloting these small projects, the 7+7 and stuff with orchestra and everything.
Right.
And so we're hoping to take some of what we've learned from those projects and bring it out for everybody to enjoy.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, very nice. I'd love to see more stuff on the Facebook page too. If you ever start putting more stuff up there, let me know. I'd love to share that out to my group page too.
Yeah.
People really responded to those videos. People were excited about those. Yeah.
We we're updating the Facebook. We finally got it. I finally found the password for my Instagram account. we just moved all of our music. We're in the process of moving it all to Bandcamp.
Okay.
So that people can get the CDs and some of the merchandise that we basically stopped selling everything about like 8 years ago when I moved to Hawaii, and I just couldn't really deal with merchandising Waitiki at the same time as like building my life.
Sure.
But it's all available now, and
very nice.
It's we'd love for people to check it out. Really, I think the power of viral viewing is really helpful.
Yeah.
And so the more views that we have, tell your friends, share the music, definitely helps us and other artists to help rise to the surface. among, other mainstream acts.
Let's throw out your social media stuff and your website and all that, where people can get that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. We're on all the platforms, rebuilding our website. It's like we kind of like stopped in a time machine, and now we're coming back.
Right. Sometimes life takes over, man.
Yeah, man.
So, if they want to get the music, Waitiki, is it Waitiki 7?
Go to Waitiki, WAITIKI.bandcamp.com. Of course, you can get it at iTunes and other stuff, but if you go to Bandcamp, that's really the best situation for us. You can go on Facebook and just search Waitiki. On Instagram, we're at Waitiki. You can also tweet us. Yeah, just hit us up.
Cool.
Ask us questions about Exotica, and go on a scavenger hunt through all of our CDs and let us know what musical puns and stuff you find, because we've left them everywhere.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. I got one last question for you.
Yeah.
When this whole pandemic is over, where is the first place you want to go, or what is the first thing you want to do?
That's a great question. Yeah,
I'll help you with my answer if that helps you. So,
what's your answer?
I have three. I want to get Korean barbecue and cook it on the table. I want to get rolling dim sum, and I want to sit at a sushi bar, and I want to get drunk at Tiki Tea. Actually, so that's 4.
Okay.
Then I want to come out to Hawaii and do a bar crawl out there.
Yeah, you can do that. Okay, my 3 are: I want to go to the Maikai and have a rum barrel.
There you go.
That's my first one. My second one is I want to go to Latitude 49 because I've never been.
Latitude 29. Jeff
29.
Jeff Berry's. Yeah.
Yeah, the numbers were mixed up in my head.
Yep.
And I want to play a concert somewhere.
Yeah, very nice, man. I'd love to go see you guys play that concert.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out, Randy, to speak with us on the podcast. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking me. Thanks for supporting Waitiki. This is just awesome. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah. I'm glad that we got to talk. It's been a while. I don't know how many years it's been since we actually got to physically chat. And so it's nice to actually talk again. And it's been so long. And I look forward to more material from Waitiki.
Yeah, there will definitely be more material from Waitiki. Whether you guys want it or not, it's coming your way. So grab a Mai Tai and a rum barrel, and a shrunken skull, and a zombie, and whatever else you can hold in your arms, and get ready.
There you go. And you're always welcome to post that stuff up on the group page for Inside the Desert Oasis Room. So feel free to post your links and stuff there. I mean, I'd love to give you as much exposure as I can with our listeners.
Oh, I know what I want to do. I want to go to the Desert Oasis Room.
Dude. Okay, I know what I
want to do.
I want to add this to my list. I want to have you at the Desert Oasis Room. As a matter of fact, I'd love to have all you guys at the Desert Oasis Room, and no music or anything from you guys, just to sit down, have a good time, have some cocktails, and have some food and all that kind of stuff.
I would love that. I mean, after that Hanaho article.
Oh, you saw that
spread, man.
You saw that. Oh, nice. Dude, I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'd love to have you guys. I don't know how often you get out here to Cali, but the next time you're out here, send me a text or a call or a private message or whatever to get a hold of me, and let's make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. You will hear from me.
Very good. I hope so.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Randy. You have a good night, and we'll chat again soon.
All right. Okonka Luku.
Cheers. Aloha.